This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.
What's shaking, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast. We are here today to help you be happy, healthy, wealthy. And the gentleman I'm bringing on today, he's absolutely going to help you do, well, actually, we were talking about being happy off the air. We were talking about being healthy. And this man is legitimately an expert when it comes to being wealthy. So get ready to write down some notes. Carl J. Cox is the CEO of 40 Strategy, host of the Measure Success podcast, and author of Lost at CEO. As an executive, Carl has led 7 different companies to 3x growth or more. Today, 40 Strategy designs strategic plans for US-based companies from startup to 100 million and helps keep them accountable to get it done. Carl is married to his high school sweetheart and has 4 children. I'm not entirely sure how you do that with 4 kids, man. That's a lot. But what's up, brother? How are you?
Jam, it is doing fantastic, and it's really great to be on your show today.
Well, I'm happy to have you. And, I'm going to start with health. I know it's not what you came to talk about, but you and I were talking off air, and I just think it's so important because I'm truly baffled at how much you are doing, and yet your health has not been 100%. That's not easy to juggle those balls in the air when you're launching a book, you got the website, you got the company, and you're not feeling 100%. So talk to me about what's happening, man. What's your journey been like finding your health? And tell me what you said off air, because I just think everyone needs to hear this because you're succeeding despite not being at your top level. I can't wait to see what you do when you're at 100%.
Well, we have to go back a little bit further, which perhaps preceded all of this was back in September 2020. I was driving between Portland and Seattle, and I felt a little pain in my side. Well, I thought it was nothing. And actually, matter of fact, I did something I'd never done in my life because I've gone between Portland and Seattle hundreds of times. I checked into a hotel at 2 p.m.
Wow.
I was sick every hour for the next hour for 12 hours. Woke up, I was like, I'm not sure if I'm going to wake up because I'm not going to go through the details of what was going on each hour. You can imagine I was very, very sick. And going to the hospital, like, oh yeah, it seems like you got appendicitis. And another 12 hours later, because this was just when COVID operations were starting to open back up. So nobody could come in to see me. I was literally there all alone. And they're like, oh, we think something's going on. Well, they open me up. I wake up and he says, that's the worst burst appendicitis he's ever seen in his life, in his career. And you're going to be in here. Good news, you're going to live, but you're going to be here a full week. So coming out of that podcast, I had one of those, life is short. So I'm going to do 3 things. Got to write a book, got to do a podcast, and some podcast, book, and run a marathon. Forgive me, run a marathon. That's the 3rd thing. So ran the marathon, podcast is going strong, book is getting ready. Lost at CEO that you mentioned earlier. That's getting ready to be released end of May. So it's all happening, so I recovered, right? I started running marathon, I should say, run several half marathons. I was running my last half marathon in August of 2022. And next thing I know, I can't feel my feet. So I've been going since August of 2022 till today, and I still can't, I have numbness in my feet every moment. And so that's been a challenge. And first you have to figure out, is something scary? Is something really wrong going on? I've done all of the traditional stuff. I've taken medications to try to help it out. Getting ready to see a neurosurgeon. I'm actually really hoping to avoid neurosurgery. I've started yoga for the first time in my life to change, to see if that will help out. It actually is helping both. I would actually say it's helping physically and mentally, which has been a huge surprise because frankly, Jam, if you would have told me a year ago if I'm going to do yoga, I would have laughed in your face. I would have never said to do that ever. And then secondly, I've had my whole life I've had acid reflux. So a lot of people take Zantac or whatever, they take Tums. Mine's gotten to a point where it's gotten bad. I've gotten to a point where it's gotten to a situation. So I've gotten away my entire life with eating, I'd frankly say poorly. I've gotten away with 49 years of bad eating, and it's caught up to me. So I've completely changed my eating habits, starting to do breathing techniques that I've never done in my life. I've a huge revamp. And why? Well, why would I do this? Some would say, why don't you just quit? Why don't you stop going and doing these activities? Why don't you stop writing a book? Why don't you stop trying to grow your business? I've got a mission, and I got to fulfill this mission that I'm trying to do. We're trying to positively impact 1 million people, 10,000 organizations. We give the first 10% of our revenue to charity with the goal of at least giving $1 million to charity over the next decade. And we're well on our way to doing that. So that's what gets me out of bed each day. But my body, right, is well, we're getting older, not you get younger. And so you have to get through this. You have to endure. And it's not been easy. I mean, I'll just clarify, it has not been easy. It's been uncomfortable, challenging. But when you have a mission, it helps get you through where you're trying to accomplish, despite, right, the physical ailments we might be dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I'm happy that you're obviously recovering, but what's amazing to me, and this happens to so many of us, there's this moment of perspective, and it's like, okay, I'm not immortal. Life is happening, and I haven't done everything I've wanted to do. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to, what was the other one that you're doing?
Book, marathon, podcast. So yeah, those three things. Yeah.
How did I forget? I was on your podcast, for God's sakes. But you made these life altering decisions for the better because of this moment. And here's what the point I bring up is, look, health is wealth. And to give you guys context, this drive from Portland to Seattle is only about 2.5 hours. So I'm picturing you in some hotel in like Olympia, just in serious pain. And brother, I'm so glad you listened to your body. And I'm so glad that you're saying, all right, enough. I'm going to do the things that I've pushed off. I'm going to get healthy. And not that you're not healthy, you look great, but that's awesome. Well, tell me about the book, man. What was the idea of the book? Why Lost at CEO? And what was kind of I'm going to write this book. This is why it's important. This is how we're going to impact the world. What was the reason?
Well, it's interesting. I think a lot of us have this concept. I want to write a book, right? I want to put something out there, take my knowledge, take my information, and share it. And this has been a 2-year process. This has not happened overnight. And as I mentioned to you I'll go back to 2020 is when I said, I want to write a book, seriously. So I actually got down the version of my first book. Matter of fact, got it to the final edit, The 7 Sales of Success. And there's something didn't feel right about it. And so I got scared. I pulled it off the shelf before it got released. Worked with somebody else who was coaching me, Jessica Yarbrough, doing an amazing job of helping to coach me in some concepts, some ideas, had some more continued experiences and doing with business. And the common concept I was running into was some of the favorite books I've read, The Goal, E-Myth, The Alchemist. These are all stories. They're stories of where we feel like we can walk through it and we have empathy because we've been there before, or sympathy, if you may. And so this story is done in that way of it's an entrepreneur, a CEO who is going through their business. They help buy this business, and they initially had success, but then it started to fail. And they run into, quote unquote, me. I use a different character, who is the consultant that they meet at a Starbucks, at a coffee shop. And I give them guidance along the way as they're going through their traditional strategic planning process that historically doesn't work. 90% of strategic plans fail. So my mission on earth is to get people to that top 10%. There's no reason that your strategic plan can fail. There's no reason that you can't get 2/3 of your strategic objectives done if you design it the right way. So that's my mission, is to help make sure if somebody wants to go somewhere, we design them. But I've written the book in a way that it's not just this 7 things to do it. These are the principal foundations. You could take any one of the 7 principles and improve what you're doing. Now, when you put it all together, you know how it is. When you put it all together, you just rock it. You're gonna have a high rate of success. So that's the catalyst behind it. And I'm super excited about it. Super scary. You've written books, it's scary to release and let go and go, oh gosh, you're going to be judged, right? Based on this piece of work. But it's really my 30 years plus of working with CEOs, being a CEO myself, and knowing the pain, because if we're honest as a CEO, we do get lost at times, but we can't admit it. We can't admit it, right? Because we're alone, we're at the top, and we can't even talk to our number two. And sometimes we can't even talk to our spouse about it because they're like, hey, you said you were going to do this entrepreneur thing and you were going to make money off of it. And it's not working and it's scary, right? And so this book is meant to be this kind of companion of there's a better way to do it and you don't have to be alone. And by learning through these principles, let's walk you through how you could be more successful, more likely to change. Because what happens, you and I know this, we get caught in the business. So, Jim, you and I don't work with slackers, right? We work with high performing, extraordinary people. I work with PhDs, people at the highest point of their game. They have done incredible. None of these people are slackers, but they get stuck because they get so caught in their business, they stop working on their business. And then the next thing they do is, because when they get stuck, things start passing by them. Like if people aren't getting into ChatGPT right now, look out. This is the biggest thing since the internet. And I'm not understanding that. Okay, this is the biggest explosion. If you're not getting into it unless you're a business, you are not going to be ahead of the game in 5 years. So moving forward, just a point of, right, if you don't change your habits, what happens is you get stuck. And then once you get stuck, you get to this third point, which is ultimately you start failing. And so my goal is to get people, once they're lost, to not go to this stage 2 and stage 3. And by the way, Jeff Bezos kind of came up with this concept. Day 1 is growth. Day 2 is stasis. Day 3 is death. And every building Jeff Bezos goes into is called the Day 1 building. Because the whole concept of Amazon is if we're not growing, we're not succeeding. And so that's the key concepts around it. That's why I'm excited about it. I've been there myself. My clients have been there. I've been within companies that have done this, but at the same time, I've been with more success than failure. I've seen 7 different companies, been with 7 different companies that have tripled in size or more, but I've also been on the other side behind it. I've had the situation, Jam, where I've handed out 200 checks to families because the company I was with did not properly succeed. That's not fun. So I've seen the good, I've seen the bad, and my goal is to get people to avoid the bad, be as successful as they can. And these things are research-based, combined with the actual practical experiences to make it into something that anyone can make it work.
Well, you said a lot I want to unpack, so I'm going to figure out how to start with my first question. I guess the first one, A, congratulations on the book. That's a big deal. B, do you guys understand how crazy that is to have this book at the last iteration? It's ready to go, publish, and he says, nah, we're going to pull it back and we're going to make it better. You have shown a couple things that have clearly are a part of what you do. So when I think strategy, I don't think of trusting my gut, but clearly, Carl, this is something that's a part of your magic is, and you've said it in 2 stories. One, I'm driving. Yeah, I'm in pain, but I can make it to Seattle. Nope, something's wrong. I'm pulling over. Okay. Trust the gut. Something's wrong and you do it. Same thing with the book. But I don't think strategy and think, all right, I'm going to put my gut in play. But clearly, this is a huge part. And the second thing that you've said several times is my mission. And I think so often people it gets watered down and they're like, oh, I've heard, yeah, have my purpose, have my mission. You can't drive this point home enough, how important that is to your success. When you get clear on your why, as Sinek said, is start with why. You get clear on your mission. You get clear on what that is. Nothing can stop you in getting in the way. So talk to me a bit about how you trust your gut and strategy and how that all comes together, because that is coming through very, very clearly that this is a part of who you are. And I'm guessing this is something that as you're coaching these executives, these teams are saying, hey, you know what to do. It's in there. You got to be willing to trust it. Is that a part or am I just reaching here?
No, you nailed it. And what's interesting is what listeners will be surprised about to say is my first decade of my career was as a bean counter.
Hmm.
I started out as a CPA and I worked through and became a CFO by the age of 30. It was with multiple different companies, with the publicly traded companies. And what surprised me was this: we'd get all the facts together and then we make an emotional decision.
Hmm.
So what people miss often is that it does come down to our belief that the data is right, and then we ultimately make a decision to jump and move forward and take a risk. What happens often is like what happened with my first book thing. I pulled back because I knew it wasn't right. It wasn't the right book at the right time. It wasn't going to have the impact that I thought that I was going to have. One of the books I have behind me, for those who are just listening, but is John Acuff's Start. I love it being up in the front is because we do have to ship it. We have to ultimately make this emotional decision and take a risk in realizing we might fail. But once again, part of my desire is why, once again, the book is when we prepare right, the outcome is much more likely to be successful. And then the second part is we have to adjust as we launch. And then as a result, we can end up meeting our final outcome as we get towards there. So yeah, emotion is real. We are, despite ChatGPT, despite the AI, despite all the different things that are coming out and that will be continuing to expand the way we deal with technology, you and I are still humans. And our connection with humans is what drives our real decisions. It's not facts. I mean, I wish it would have been so easy to be the CFO. I was like, oh, it's all about numbers. I can tell you how many times I've showed numbers that was completely factual. And I've had executive and board meetings saying, we're going to do something different.
I'm laughing because it's so true, man. You're like, no, look at this really compelling argument why you should follow this, but they follow the story. They follow the emotion almost every time. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I've seen this so many damn times. It's incredible.
No, you nailed it. I mean, it's laugh out loud funny. And sure enough, that's a big reason why I changed the book, because I want people to get emotionally connected to the reality of their story. That the reality of the story, it is an emotional change. What, whether if you have every day, if you happen to have a significant other with you, you wake up, that's a big thing, right? The person right next to you. If you happen to have kids, those are big things, whether they're adult or younger children. You have to take care of them. You go into the office, if you have employees, there's emotion there, right? And as much as I want to be logic, and I'm a get it done type. I mean, the irony behind all this is I'm a get it done type guy. I mean, that is my first thing, is getting things done. But if I don't connect emotionally with the people I'm with, they won't follow. I've coached 25 seasons of sports, primarily youth sports, and I love coaching. And nothing's more fun when you could take a young athlete and turn them into something that they could barely walk and talk. And next thing you know, they're like hitting a home runs or making interceptions or whatever it may be. That's exciting going through that process. Well, I get excited about that work as well. I get excited when you have talent and it hasn't been matured yet. Jay, this is full circle of something. Over a decade ago, I was working with Tanya in the sports fields. She was the parent volunteer. And as I said, I coached 25 seasons. I had a lot of parent volunteers, and there was a lot of differentials between those parent volunteers. Well, she was so good. I said, you ought to consider becoming a project manager. She was at that time, I think, working like at a doctor's office, dental office. And she's like, and anyways, 3-4 years later, I get this invitation. I hadn't stopped talking to her because our kids were slightly different ages. I get invited to her graduation. She'd actually went to get her degree to become a project manager. Fast forward a decade later, she's working on her PhD, and now she's working with me. she's helping out project managing our captain strategy program, where we're teaching leadership on how to do strategic planning the right way. So why I say that, if we didn't create these connections, if we didn't trust, if we didn't believe, right, by planting these seeds, sometimes those seeds, as I say, grow 40, 100, 200x. and they turn into partnerships, relationships, opportunities. And that's what once again, gets me excited, right? Is to see where you see some people will see a lump of clay and you see, no, this person has talent. It just has not been refined yet. And that's where I go back to the strategic planning. There are so many companies out there that are unnecessarily struggling. Entrepreneurs are not taking home real money. They're not. Like, if you're honest with them, they'll say, oh, I'm $1 million business, but you ask them what their take-home pay is, they're making less than they would have made at a fast food restaurant. And look, I've been there. I've been in multiple entrepreneurships where there was no money to start out with, but if you're still there 3 years later and you're making less than you would make as working at a McDonald's drive-through, you don't have a business, you have a hobby. And worse, and you have an underpaid hobby, and so we work with so many different parts of that equation of, hey, look, let's actually work on a business that's actually creating value, not just for the outside world, but for yourself and your family as well, because you'll never gain peace if you don't have that going.
Yeah, you're on this area that is so fascinating to me, because I was talking to my wife about this. Look, I can help people lose weight. I can help them in their business. I can help them in lots of ways, but I can't influence or do anything until they choose that they want to upgrade, make that change. And that's what I'm hearing, brother. It's like, look, you see these businesses all the time where they have this really expensive hobby. Like you said, you could be making far more at Chick-fil-A than you're making at, your business. But until they make that decision, just like you and being in that hotel room, having the appendicitis, that's when you said, all right, enough is enough. I'm going to make these changes. It fascinates me, brother. And it also, obviously, this is the most frustrating thing for coaches. When you see this talent, this skill, this amazing person that can upgrade into anything they want, but they choose not to, you just want to pull your hair out. But I have also reached a point where until they choose to make this, until they choose, I'm going to upgrade, which that's the name of my next book coming out, is Upgrade. Until they make that choice, there's not a heck of a lot we can do as coaches. Do you feel the same way, brother, as you work with these businesses? Because that's what I'm hearing is like, look, Carl can help me, but he can't unless I'm ready to make these upgrades, these changes.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I keep on going back to the emotion, right? Is that unless, despite all the facts I could provide them, and I could give them so many Harvard research studies behind, if you do this, cause and effect, you will have a greater result. If they don't believe it, it will not come true.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I've said many times. I've never changed one person's belief, never in my life. That doesn't mean I haven't influenced, right, or presented, but only you, listeners, only you can change your beliefs. No one else can. We may have already answered this, but there's a great topic on here that I want to get into, obviously, with the name of your company, why strategic plans fail. And maybe we've talked about it. Maybe it is the fact that we're not taking into account, we have the facts and figures and we have the emotional decision, but there's got to be a little bit more to it. And you talk about accountability in the end of your bio, which I think is such a crucial part of this. So talk to me about why strategic plans fail, whether it's a diet, a business, as you're changing your diet, this may apply. And so now you're like, well, now I got a true plan in place. I'm good at this. Why would it potentially fail, Carl?
So we have 7 different key concepts, and we'll walk through, and we've talked actually about a couple of them already. The first one is there is not a long-term core mission or purpose. Mm. And so a lot of people tell me they're doing strategic planning, but they're just doing 1 year annual budgeting. That is not strategic planning. I'm sorry. You might call it that, but it's not definite. It's not, you're just making typically incremental changes on your business. You're not changing your habits. So we'll get into that in just a moment. So that's number one. Number one is you need to have this longer term vision. I like 10 years or plus, how you're going to change the world. In whatever it is you do. How are you going to make a difference? What is getting you up each day, right? We have a finite period on this earth to make a difference. life is too short. Here is sitting in that hotel room in Centralia, Washington. And trust me, that's not a place I've ever stopped in a hotel, never hoped to before or since. Okay. And
It's the
so
Centralians.
forgive me, Centralia people. I love getting started there, getting Starbucks, not much more in between there and there. But anyways, so number one is you got to have this long-term purpose. Number two, you got to have aspiring type goals. You got to have things that are going to stretch you to change your habits. That's number two. Number three is you got to figure out how you're going to get there. It's your plan. Simply, a strategic plan is how you get from A to B. And the plan is that how. If you have multiple team members in your team and they're going to be helping to accomplish it, you need to help them out understand what step one and step two is, your vision, why the big long goal, but you want to get them and figure out the how, because if they're implementing it, you want them to buy in. Otherwise, they will sabotage you. 51% of managers will sabotage the strategic plans because they'll say they're too busy. 98% of strategic plans fail because people say they're too busy. Okay, it's one of the key. It's just crazy. That's just one data point where people say they complain about why they fail. Moving forward, okay, Jim, I still have this problem today. Just yesterday, 2 different companies approached me on extraordinary wow things and perhaps how 40 strategists can get involved with. And here I've got these key things I need to drop right now. And they're like, do you want to go? So that leads us to trim. Okay. Trim means there's a book behind me called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. They did 1,500 strategic implementations, say don't do more than 3 things at one time. They revised it after 4,500 implementations and said, do one thing at a time. Okay. They recognize do one thing at a time. I'm not saying you always have to do one thing at a time, because there are things that you have to kind of cross over. But when you do too much at one time, it will fail in some way or fashion. So trim down to the absolute necessary. Interestingly enough, the next part is you got to act, you got to start, you got to move forward, you got to take that leap of faith. You have to move forward. After you've moved forward and you can't see the shore anymore, you have to have indicators that you're moving in the right direction. And when I talk about indicators, I'm not talking about the end result. I'm not talking about you doubling in sales. I'm not talking about you expanding your headcount or going to a new market. What I'm talking about is, what are the actions that you're doing along the way to get you there? The leading indicators are far more important than the lagging indicators. This is also something that Amazon teaches consistently, is what are we doing? What can we control, which is the leading indicators, that are going to have an impact on the outcome to the lagging indicators. After we go through that process, we've measured it, then we have to learn and adjust. Because often, I'm going to give you this analogy of World War II for just a moment. You've seen Saving Private Ryan before, Jam?
Of course, many times. Great movie.
One of my all-time favorite movies. There's a great book, D-Day, Stephen Ambrose wrote. They planned that mission. It's a massive book, hundreds of pages, and a massive book about the 6 to 9 months of planning D-Day. And then there's Citizen Soldiers, which is D-Day +1 to the end of the war, which is about the same length of the book. Just shows you how much effort was on D-Day itself, because we don't get a beachhead. We don't get there. Now, this is the fascinating thing, Jim. We got on the beach successfully after, of course, there was different parts of the beach that didn't go as well, Omaha in particular, but they got on the beach. And the very next day, they didn't know that hedgerows existed. Okay, so for those in the audience who don't know what a hedgerow is literally overgrown roads that have big trees that are overhanging it, and elevated areas. These were extraordinary defensive positions for the Germans. Our Sherman tanks couldn't go in it. We literally had to change our entire tactics to overcome and get to Cherbourg. Why do I bring this up? If the greatest, and at that point in time, the greatest, smartest people in the world are trying to figure out how to get D-Day, they had no idea, despite thousands of photographs, they had no idea that hedgerows existed, and they had to change the way they were doing it. Did you know that COVID was coming? Right? No. Did you know that we were going to have the greatest inflation we've had since the 70s? No. Okay. Things change, and you have to adapt your strategic plan to get it to work. Why so many end up collecting dust in your bookshelf and you hide and you don't want to talk to your consultant about is because you weren't continuously working with them. You said goodbye. And by the way, they were just like an ideation group only. You want to work with them to continue to get through because you still have to have faith that the end is important. And how all you have to do is adjust some of the hows, because what you learned when you got into the wild, when you learned you got into the marketplace, is something you thought was going to work on that whiteboard didn't actually work in the real world. That doesn't mean you failed. It just means you have to change your tactics or refocus on what things are going to work more effectively. And having that concept of being adjusting and going through is a huge differentiator on outcomes that work versus outcomes that don't.
Yeah, there's two subjects I want to make sure that we don't miss, because what I think I heard for sure is, look, your purpose, your mission, it didn't change, right? Just like you're bringing up World War II. Look, we are going to stop this absolute awful regime and man and this, or the world is going to cease the way we know it. And so there was lots of different learning, apply, reflect, figure out how to get it better. And so obviously this is what you're talking about. And you use the at sea, and I'm looking at the huge wave that's, I think that's a lighthouse that is literally getting crushed. And you say lost at CEO. So why this, what about the water? What is it with you and being out? Because I guess you're in it, you have no choice. You're going to have to adjust your plan because you're trying to get from point A to point B safely. Is that the idea, Carl, or are you a sailor? Tell me where that comes from, brother.
No, yeah, it is all connected for sure. My father was in the Merchant Marines. He was an officer in the Merchant Marines. And he would tell me when he would go out to sea that it was a scary, big ocean. He'd be in these massive tankers, and waters would come up and make them and throw them around like a children's toy. And you see this, lighthouse. What people can see if you are watching this on YouTube, there's a lighthouse behind me with a guy who's sitting in there, and a huge wave is coming across on it. And of course, he's getting ready to go into the door, right? Because if he doesn't, he's going to get swallowed by the sea that's going around him. When you have a foundation, you can overcome all the waves in the sea, because trust me, you and I have been there, Jam. Whether it's your spouse, I don't mind saying the worst fight I got when I decided to open up this business with my wife. She was like, Carl, I'm done with you being an entrepreneur. she literally was like, I'm done. You've done this multiple times. I'm done with you being an entrepreneur. But I knew based on what I was doing previously with Cascade Strategy, they had asked me actually to become the global consultant. And I was like, look, I don't want to be gone 80% of the time and miss my last two kids' high school career and their ability to get in college and high school sports. And so I was like, I don't want to miss that. So that's why I went off on my own, so I could, primarily focus on the 4 time zones in the US. We do serve some global clients a little bit, but we primarily focus in the US. But you got to have this, once again, this piece that regardless of the waves that are coming across you, and regardless of the uncertainty and all the powers, that you are going to stay resolute. Because trust me, your employees, your spouse, your friends, they're going to tell you you're crazy. They're going to tell you it can't work. And you need that resolute purpose and mission that you're going to get there regardless of what people have told you. And why I think it's great to have a coach. I've hired multiple coaches to help me out, and I still do today. And the why is because you need somebody to keep you sane along the way. Because the sad part is the closest ones around you would typically be telling you you're nuts. And then that starts getting in your own head of, I can't do it. This is not going to work. I'm not going to positively impact 1 million people. I'm not going to be able to get to my targets of how much I'm going to get. I'm not going to be able to double my business or triple my business. But Jim, what I didn't tell you is, despite all those things going on, we've doubled 40 strategy every year. And we have, this year we're going to have another growth plan, and we're going to continue to grow, and we're going to hit our long-term targets because we are resolute on our difference to make a difference. And have we had to change our strategy along the way? Absolutely. But it's based on learning. It's not based on fear. It's based on learning, because we want to make sure we deliver the best product at the best value so people can make a difference with it. This is what so we walk the walk the best we can. right? We try to do and what we do here because it's everything I've learned, it's everything I've done, and I just pass along this knowledge, right, to our clients so they can have the same level of success. And it's awesome. Like we've had companies that have doubled in size. I'm not talking about small doubles, I'm talking about big doubles in 12 to 18 months. So it's fun. It's just it's what's fun is it's legit as can be when you do the right things.
Well, and you had talked about trim, and I said I was only going to do 2 subjects. We're going to hit this one because we have to. And you and I were talking off air. Like I asked you specifically about this one thing, and you're like, actually, I had to put that on pause because I'm very focused on what I'm launching. The shiny object syndrome kills so many dreams because, and it's not out of lack of effort, right? And any entrepreneur knows what I'm talking about. When you want it so bad and something comes along, you're like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And you just keep, but now you have 10% of your energy over here, 10% over here, 10% over there. And none of it's really getting what it needs. So I love that idea of trim. We can't get off before we talk about it because you're going through it right now. You're like, look, man, I'm getting hit with different, ideas and they're amazing, but yet it's not serving my ultimate purpose and mission, which is step 1, step 2, step 3. I don't know if there's more to that, brother. It's just, I feel that I've gone through it, and it's such a challenging thing for entrepreneurs to know, hey, what is my priority? And it doesn't mean you can't do these other things. It's just probably not the right time.
Yeah. So it's simpler than it sounds, right? Because of the shiny object syndrome. We are amazing humans at going, wow, that looks amazing. This looks like a great opportunity. It's a fascinating of how we're not satisfied with what we have and what we can do, right, with our existing vehicle. And so it's incredibly important to stay focused on that. One of the things to do if you're in this bind of, I've got 58 other things. So let's just a little tactic you can share with the listeners here. List out all your things. Okay, let's say you have 12 things. You're like, these 12 things can make a difference. So this is how I want to challenge you to determine how you need to narrow it down to the top 3 or less. Take those 12 things. Number 2, determine what type of impact it'll have in the next 3 years by doing it. You can measure that in terms of dollars. You can put a 1 through 10 rating on it. So have some type of value indicator. The third thing you want to do is the percentage likelihood of that succeeding. 100%, 50%, 70%, 25%. Then you literally multiply that impact times the percentage. You get a weighted average score. The good things will float to the top. Focus on the good things and delay or put out forward or delegate the things that are going to have lower impact. But more importantly, just stop doing it. Because when you could focus on those top core 3 things that have a high impact and high likelihood of taking place, it's when you start not making McDonald's money, but you start making big time money, right? You start making money where you're not worrying about money. You're actually trying to figure out where you're going to invest your money. That's when you know you have good problems, right? When you're in that stage of life. And so that little aspect right there of doing from A to B, focus on the impact and how to do it, will have a huge impact on making the right decisions so you can emotionally buy in to focusing on those few.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's a beautiful formula. We have to talk about ChatGPT because you brought it up a couple times. And I'm watching people have so many emotions towards it: fear, anger, excitement, unbelievable. But I'm watching people literally go, I'm going to put my head in the sand. This isn't real. It's not happening. And like you said, this is the biggest thing since internet. AI is here. So you can feel however you want about it, but the fact is it's a part of us now. And I want people to embrace it because it has so many amazing abilities. And I was on a podcast yesterday and he said, is it going to replace humans? And I said, well, it's going to replace human tasks, allowing some of the humans to do greater things. I think it's one of the greatest tools I've ever seen. I utilize it often. So I don't know, brother, how are you using it today? Because I'm trying to tell everybody, don't be afraid of this thing. It's a good thing.
Right, with all new technology, all those things you mentioned, all the fears, all the concepts, hiding from it. Oh, it's not going to last. Or it's the greatest thing since the internet, which I had talked to Jacob Coker, who is the head of AI labs. Paul Allen funds us to put like $60 to $70 million per year. He was on the show, talk about one of the smartest people I've ever connected with. And he only works with AI companies. And he said, Carl, you cannot understate the impact of what ChatGPT is going to do. What he said is it's like when AWS came out, right? All of a sudden, companies didn't need a server farm to be able to start a company. They can now take an internet and launch a company. Or when the internet, right? Think about when the internet started, all of a sudden we can connect and get to information we never had beforehand. And he said, this is like 100x that. He wasn't underestimating. And so how do we use it? How are we using it? And how we plan to continue to use it? Well, the cool thing is you could teach ChatGPT, right? You know this, JM, right? So you can create an avatar. So let's say your customer set is 30 to 50-year-old athletes. You can tell ChatGPT, this is my avatar. These are the people who I want to talk with. And then you could bring in research reports to get it to learn those research reports because they might not be in the current part to go into this avatar. And then you could learn all of your existing documentation if you happen to have existing documentation. And then you can say, write in an eighth grade language, right? And you can combine this. And so let's say you write a weekly blog, just as an example. And one of our blogs, we're our 40th month of our company. And so we're relaunching our blog. We're calling it Strategy for Saturday. I plan to utilize ChatGPT for every single one of those. And I plan to take a 2-hour event and bring it down to 15 to 30 minutes. The human still has to be involved. If you just print off a ChatGPT, that's not human, right? The humans still exist. People pick up when it's just a computer. So this is where I go back to emotion. This brings it all the way back. You have to connect your factual message so people will act on it. ChatGPT is just going to accelerate the process of your ideation so you can help get things done way faster. Darren Hardy, I follow him a fair amount, and he does his daily event, and he says he takes 4 to 6 hours to produce one of those each day. It's literally just a 5 to 7 minute video. He thinks he can now get down his to a half hour. Think about how much time that's going to free up from his life, right? By using it. And so yeah, we're fully indwelt. We're using this, plan to use it, plan to incorporate it within our trainings, because this is the future. And if you're not using it, you will be less efficient than your competitor. That's the problem. You'll be less effective and less efficient as your competitors. Therefore, you're going to be making McDonald's money rather than investment money, right? And so our goal is to get you to the investment money side, so you're creating a difference, reaching your impact, and you could go home at night where your significant other is encouraging you to go to work again each day. I didn't go full circle back to my wife. She's fully all in now with what I'm doing. But it took a while. It took a while for her to go, wow, you're actually doing good at this. You're actually in the right place. You're actually making money off of this, right? And it took some time. But now she's there. She literally just said, Carl, you are happiest working on your own. And I'm like, absolutely. Thank you for figuring this out after 40 months. But it's not easy. It's a leap of faith. It is an emotional event when you decide to become an entrepreneur or take the lead in a company. In any role, it's a director role, any role where you're in a leadership role, you got to take that emotion, but have a purpose behind why you're doing it. And then you can help accomplish what you want to try to do.
Well, brother, I'm so happy that you are hitting your mission. You're working towards it. You're at home enjoying your kiddos as they do develop, because it goes far too fast, as you already know. Brother, this is fascinating. I mean, we're running out of time. I can't believe how fast and easy it was. Amazing. Where can people connect with you, Carl, if they're like, I need to talk to Carl, I want to take my startup to 100 million? Like, yeah, man. So where can they find you online?
So the easiest thing to do is go to 40strategy.com. That's our main website. You can go ahead and fill out a form and connect. I'm going to give our listeners I don't do this very often. We're doing it for you, Jam. My direct email, which is carljcox@40strategy.com. And so feel free to connect from that perspective. Also, we have other ways to connect. We have the Measure Success podcast, which you could find. We're one of the top global podcasts out there. And then we'll have our book coming out at the end of May, which is going to be, once again, Lost Its CEO. And once again, we're excited if you get a chance to read that, go through that. And then finally, on our website, you'll be able to connect to the Strategy for Saturday blog. It's just a 4-minute read on Saturdays, just to give you some tactics, some strategies, some tips on how you can help run your business or your leadership opportunities, even on a personal side, a little bit better than you did in the past.
So good, brother. Well, I can't wait to read the book. Congrats on the last iteration, and definitely excited to read it. And thank you for being here, man. You brought so many good nuggets. I rarely use that word, but it was I have a page full of notes, and it's all really applicable stuff. So thank you, brother. You're amazing.
Jam, hey, thank you. I appreciate all the things that you do. Once again, on LinkedIn, you're incredible, and the books that you're writing and the impact I know you've made. So I'm just happy to be connected with you. I think we both found what's extraordinary with podcasts is that the incredible network and humans we've connected with who are making also a great difference as well. So thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate what you do every day.
Hi, brother. This is why I love podcasts. I mean, and shout out to my boy, Tommy Breedlove. He was connected Carl and I, and just so appreciative to have him in my life. Told you guys, happy, healthy, wealthy. I mean, we literally nailed them all. You follow a little bit of this and your life will be so much happier. You are going to certainly be wealthier. And we hit it off with health. Health is your wealth. And I'm so happy my brother Carl is getting back to 100%. So, all right, you guys, until next time, make sure to share this out. There's not one human being I can think of that would not benefit from what Carl said, would not benefit from taking a look at what 40 Strategy is doing and just spending some time on that. So until next time, you guys, we'll talk soon. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.